of
it's not about a dereliction
impeachment.
of duty. The entire history of Trump is a 2016 election, which was interfered with by him. And then we have the next thing that we have is him deciding that his worst opponent for the presidential election is Biden, and he interferes in Ukraine. Then at some point have decided that he couldn't get the vote because he was forecasting it all along that they're going to steal this from me. They're going to steal this from me. And then when he loses it, he goes into the slow mode.
Serum from Wet
this
and Wild.
Man's intent is so clear. And their defense is going to be that he was innocent in intent. And the prior acts that rebut that are in the normal court of law, what you can use to show that that's nonsense, that his intent is, oh, I was surprised and I didn't know. I mean, you have the three stooges, in my opinion, Don Jr., and Rudy, on the day, all reinforcing each other to go charge the Hill. The three people they pardoned, the same thing. We had Stone and we had Flynn, and these guys were cementing this entire January 6th rally. And they sent the buses out there and everything. So if anything, going thin like this was a one-ply drug case is one way a prosecutor could approach it. But there's so much more stuff out there, and I think they did it and made a sufficient case that this is not a dereliction of duty. This is a clear intent to overthrow our government, and that's acceptable in America. And that they were going to take out the line of succession is certainly a fair implication. And in a regular crime, if you commit a murder in the course of the crime, you're responsible for felony murder. And these people were all agreeing and talking to each other in such a fashion that the only way you could read this is it was an effort to overthrow our government so he could become our first whatever, autocrat, dictator, king, monarch, whatever he thought he was.
I mean, this is why we have Flannery here. He lays it out. I mean, I'm going to ask Professor Murray to be the judge to the two cases we've just heard, Flannery being the most aggressive prosecutorial case. Felony murder both happens. There's plenty of people in jail for felony murder. On the other hand, it's controversial because it's an aggressive approach. But if we call that the most aggressive, Professor Murray, and what Emily was educating us on was the other legal analysis that separate from the narrow question of incitement, the constitutional dimension of any abuse of power or betrayal of office is also impeachable and convictable. That is to say, people who don't do the job. He abandoned his post. He did not defend the Capitol. He did not defend his vice president. If you imagine a hypothetical where his vice president was pursued by people who didn't happen to be Trump fans, but were just other thuggish criminals trying to hang him in the front yard of the Congress. I mean, all the words we use, Melissa, they sound stark. Then what happened? They wanted to have a public hanging of the vice president. If any president doesn't respond to that, that is an arguable, potential, impeachable dereliction, as Emily was pointing out, which is separate from I think what John argues, which is there's also larger culpability. So Judge Murray, we give you the final word of this segment as a judge.
Well, let me say this. I think John's point would be very fair in an actual court of law. This isn't an actual court of law. This isn't an ordinary criminal proceeding. It has elements of the political to it, and I think Emily's points speak to that. What the managers were trying to do in raising this dereliction of duty defense is basically a pre-buttal for what is going to follow tomorrow, where Trump's defense is going to say that he was fiery, he was rhetorical, but he did not intend for anyone to go and lay siege to the Capitol. And they're offering a defense that says, yes, that may have been the case. Maybe it wasn't, as John suggests. But even if it was the case, he knew that he was the only one who could call it off. And he waited and he waited and he waited. And then he embraced them as good people whom he loved, and he sent them on their way to be peaceful. But he didn't actually intervene in a way that was meaningful or that could have stopped the violence that was unfolding in such dramatic fashion. So I'm going to give this one to my law school classmate, Emily Bazelon. And John, I appreciated the first.
Well, here's how it works.
I thought it was very judicial.
John, I don't know if you know how this works, but in the same sense that the Senate impeachment trial is only a quasi-like court, so is this segment. And in this quasi-court, Judge Murray's rulings are not appealable. They're final. And you lose even though we love you, John.
Well, I appreciate it. It's nice to be loved.
We're done. But I will say, even though we can mix in a little bonhomie within serious times, we do feel more educated having listened to our kickoff experts here, Emily, Melissa, and John, my thanks to each of you. We do have our shortest break in special coverage now. It's just 30 seconds. When we're back, we'll hear from U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. We're back in 30 seconds.
Between sudden snowfalls, slick ice.
So we're getting ready for snow here.
Pretty unpredictable.
I guess this morning a lot of people around where I live got snow, but we didn't. It's weird how that happens around here. There's these patchy places that it can miss, but supposedly that was just
right now,
a little teaser, and that tomorrow we're getting supposedly between 4 to 6 inches, and since we live in the foothills, we tend to get a lot, compared to what happens at sea level. We're at 500 feet, so we'll see, but I'm hoping to go to the store one more time before the snow comes.
Today?
Well, I think they laid out that when you think about incitement, you can think about three basic things.
Oh my
The
God,
first
look
is
at that color.
That person lay out a cause, and of course that's the Trump saying the election's been stolen. Did they essentially stoke the fuel, the anger of the mob over that? And certainly they laid out how Trump had done that even before the election, when he said there's only two possibilities. Either I'm elected or the election's corrupt. And then he did it after the election in all kinds of ways. And then the third part of incitement is, did you take that anger and did you focus it on a particular event? Did you incite an event? And of course, what we learned was that he rescheduled what was supposed to happen after the installation of the new president to January 6th, timed it so the speeches could again gear people up, invited people to it who had been violent in the past, and aimed them at the Capitol. And then when they proceeded to beat up police officers, he remained silent. And in fact, we now hear he was delighted, he was pleased, and wondered why other people weren't as pleased as he was. So that was a very, very powerful case.
That's the case, and we've been tracking how it's been playing. NBC sketch artist actually was in the gallery showing this sketch. A third of the Republican seats were empty, at least during the House manager presentation as of 1 p.m. Eastern. In the terms of reporting, can you fortify our understanding of today and overall how often have the seats been largely full or not?
Well, I thought they were largely full.
This is raspberry.
Multiple times looked over to study my colleagues, and there would be 4 or 5 seats empty.
And here's grape.
But not a third. At 1 p.m., I'm surprised it's only an hour in. Later, people get up, they stretch, stand in the back, go to the bathroom, grab some water. But I did feel as the day wore on, and they were hearing arguments that had largely been touched on before, that another number of them seemed to be checking out somewhat more.
And Senator Merkley, those who follow this closely saw a little bit of the small controversy, or what you might call a non-controversy, with your colleague Senator Mike Lee last night. What was striking, putting parliamentary procedure aside, was something very basic that had happened and been documented about Donald Trump, basically, as I was mentioning to guests earlier tonight, just during the darn insurrection and during the violence and the threats, was still calling in, trying to delay the thing. He was exploiting it. And there were voicemails that have been confirmed. Senator Lee's office confirmed these calls that went into him that were also designed for another senator. And then we had that whole thing on the floor last night. I know y'all try to be respectful of each other, and every senator does have certain procedural rights, which I know, of course, from working in the Senate. But can you shed any light on that? Because it looked both petty and counterfactual.
Yes, so the senators are not very aware of the rules that we agreed to. My understanding is that he could have submitted an objection in writing and had it brought up by the defense lawyers. But not knowing all that, he stood up, he made an objection. He was very forceful about, hey, this was said about me, and I want to say that's not true. And the response was initially formalistic, but you couldn't hear our presiding officer, Patrick Leahy. We couldn't hear him because his microphone wasn't working right. Anyway, it was a bit of a kerfluffle, but it kind of draws attention to that very point. What was that all about? That was about Trump trying to reach Tommy Tuberville to, even at late moments, try to create more delay, more interference from preventing the votes from being finally certified and accepted. And so we see from the night of the election Trump is working to interrupt a valid election in every possible means.
And specifically, Senator, Mike Lee's office, as of January 7th, was saying, yes, this happened. The implication being it's bad for Trump. At that point in time, they were willing to share that fact. What has changed between then and now that Mike Lee is afraid of what his own office confirmed?
I know we're all wondering the same thing. We're not sure if there was some nuance, it wasn't accurate, or he was just trying to get his name officially struck from the record. He wasn't forthcoming with us about why he jumped into that. He didn't want to explain what was accurate and what wasn't accurate. Certainly was clarified that the floor managers, they were reporting a magazine article or a published article, so they were not inventing some fact. And as you point out, his office had confirmed it. But to our sense, it was an effort either driven by his desire not to have his name in the record in that fashion, or simply to create a ruckus in the middle of this powerful, or at the end of the day, but before the next session, of this powerful presentation. You would think every Republican right now is going, we know that if it wasn't our base being so dedicated to Trump because they live inside the Trump
well, there's
media
still so many other beautiful colors, but I just love this.
We would
so
absolutely
thank you,
be
fruit pie
voting to
filling.
convict, because this is overwhelming insurrection. We haven't seen the Capitol stormed in 200 years. The president clearly was involved in every aspect of its planning and conduct. He wasn't apologetic. He knew that violence was very likely given the people he'd invited to come, and because of the violent response to his other actions, such as in Michigan. And if he didn't know those things and was just being naive or forgetful, the moment that the police officers were attacked, he had a responsibility under his oath of office to intervene, and he didn't intervene, and he was happy about it. So they are struggling with the fact they know in their heart they should be voting to convict.
Senator Merkley, appreciate you joining us after a long day there in this trial. Thank you very much. Coming up here on our program, how some are seeing or avoiding this trial. But first, Neil Kochel and Michelle Goldberg on the specific case against Trump when we come back.
My husband and I have never eaten healthier.
Jingles doesn't care. I logged 10,000 steps today. Jingles doesn't care.
I get as much fresh air as possible.
Good for you, but Shingles doesn't care. Because 1 in 3 people will get shingles. You need protection. But no matter how healthy you feel, your immune system declines as you age, increasing your risk from getting shingles. So what can protect you? Shingrix protects. For the first time ever, you can protect yourself from shingles with a vaccine proven to be over 90% effective. Shingrix is a vaccine used to prevent shingles in adults 50 years and older. Shingrix does not protect everyone and is not for those with severe allergic reactions to its ingredients or to a previous dose. The most common side effects are pain, redness, and swelling at the injection site, muscle pain, tiredness, headache, shivering, fever, and upset stomach. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about protecting yourself with Shingrix. Shingles doesn't care, but you should.
We're taking trucks to places they've never been before, so they can be trusted like never before. By redefining quality and luxury, taking safety to new heights, earning award-winning driver appeal, and by doing what's never been done before, being named Motor Trend's Truck of the Year 3 years in a row.
A little bit of Garnier under
Now
eye.
get $6,300 in total values plus $500 bonus cash on
Wow,
the 2021
it's
Ram
super windy. I
1500.
could lose power.
Research shows that people remember commercials with exciting stuff. So to help you remember that Liberty Mutual customizes your home insurance, here's something you shouldn't try at home.
Look, Liberty Mutual customizes home insurance, so we only pay for what we need. That's pretty cool. That is.
Very cool. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. What happens when you're fired from the world's biggest chocolate maker? If you're H.B. Reese, you invent a more popular chocolate in your old boss's backyard. See how your favorite foods got to your plate on the History Channel documentary series, The Food That Built America. Check your local listings.
Pick up like a pro.
Okay, now I need some blush.
Just order on the Subway app. It is ready to go with contactless curbside.
Sorry being subjected to commercials,
now,
right?
15% off any footlong.
Okay, this came in one of the Ulta summer
Would you know what to do if you or a loved one was injured or worse, killed in an accident?
Christmas
Don't be pressured
box
to sign
in the
anything.
caboodle box.
If you want to know your legal rights, call Hardwick and Pendergast. We can help.
And so I'm going to try this pink blush for the first time.
When you switch to Xfinity Mobile, you're choosing to get connected to the most reliable network nationwide. Now with 5G included. Discover how to save up to $300 a year with shared data starting at $15 a month. Or get the lowest price for one line of unlimited. Come into your local Xfinity store to make the most of your mobile experience. You can shop the latest phones, bring your own device, or trade in for extra savings. Stop in or book an appointment to shop safely with peace of mind at your local Xfinity store.
After I was injured, I couldn't
Sorry, I
support
don't have
my
my
family or understand the insurance
TV
forms.
mute
You should be
thing right
careful
here. I'm on the
negotiating
other
your
side
own.
of my TV.
Insurance
Sorry.
companies are experts at negotiating. If you've suffered a personal injury, call Hardwick
So
and
I also
Pendergast.
want to put on
We can
some
help.
more. Try this again. The glass illuminator revolution.
Now to our special report on this trial. Did Donald Trump incite a riot of his supporters to help his failed plot to steal the election? That's the question. House impeachment managers say yes. And after 2 days of forceful and sometimes emotional arguments, they did today what prosecutors do. They rested their case. They presented evidence that they insist is damning to Donald Trump, like how even after the violent riot occurred, he was not remorseful, because they say what happened was what he wanted to happen, what he intended to happen. It's a point several managers made.
When you or I make a mistake and something very bad happens, we would show remorse. We would accept responsibility. President Trump didn't do any of that.
Eyebrows.
Why not? Because he intended what happened on January 6th. And how do we know that? He told us.
Look at what President Trump did that day after the rally. It's important. He did virtually nothing. He reacted exactly the way someone would react if they were delighted.
And the managers implored these Senate jurors to act now to prevent any of this from ever going down again.
What unfathomable horrors await us if we do not stand up now and say, no, this is not America. And we will not just express condolences and denunciations. We won't just close the book and try to move on. We will act to make sure this never happens again.
Today's evidence stretched beyond the core of this case, that Trump's rally and the attack were impeachable. It stretched into things we've been reporting tonight, to wider issues that also may speak to those attackers' intent and their inspiration. Indeed, they themselves confess they were on this crime spree, because they were responding to Donald Trump.
As one man explained on a live stream he taped from inside the Capitol, quote, our president wants us here. We wait and take orders from our president.
Does he not realize President Trump called us to siege the place?
Let's call Trump, yes! Dude, let's tell Trump what's up. Trump would be very upset. I mean, he'd be like, no, just say we love him. We love you, bro. No, he'll be happy. What do you mean? We're fighting for Trump.
Now, in contrast with a traditional trial, these managers also reach out into what people saw, what the evidence showed, and emphasize, because there is politics fused here, that those people happen to include some Republicans who did call out Trump's obvious role in the political violence, how in the clarity of January 7th and those first fateful and scary days after this siege, this attack, this insurrection, there were calls for accountability.
So I'm going to use
Until in a few weeks, but
Freedom
Democrats seem to
Creator
be
lip
referencing
palette.
how other Republicans have already backed off criticizing Trump for the insurrection, apparently in response to where they think their base is, a tendency that was on display in the Senate with Mike Lee, as we were just discussing with a guest, but the archive still stands.
People have to be held accountable, and yes, that includes the president.
His remarks during and after the travesty of the attack on the Capitol were disgraceful.
President Trump's continued refusal to accept the election results without producing credible evidence of a rigged election has started a fire that's threatened to burn down our democracy.
It's clear to me that President Trump has abandoned his sacred oath.
The fact that these flames of hate and insurrection were lit by the President of the United States will be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in our nation's history.
Or will it? That's what some Republicans said then. Some of those voices have gotten quieter. History is being written now, and in these coming days in the Senate, and in these coming months and years in America. Now, whether people can clearly denounce violence and insurrectionists and attempts to overthrow the government and the Capitol and the democracy for what was designed as a Trump dictatorship, all of these lines will be tested. The manager citing evidence to show that Donald Trump is on the wrong side of history. That's what they're arguing. That he declared January 6th.
So this is a color called
A Day to Remember.
It's kind of hard to
He declared
this.
it like some sort of open, public, terrorist sympathizer on the losing side of
Pinkie
what
Pie.
was emerging as a sloppy, failed coup. The manager's also imploring senators in the wild world to get this history right. Trump's celebration of those special rioters that he loved on that day to remember, that's some of the most incriminating evidence that lead impeachment manager Raskin invoked, arguing it will be the Senate's own fault if they cannot stop Donald Trump now, when under the law, right now, they have the chance.
President Trump declared his conduct totally appropriate. So, he gets back into office and it happens again. We'll have no one to blame but ourselves.
We're joined now by New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg and Neil Kochel, former acting U.S. Solicitor General. Michelle, your thoughts on the right side of history at this moment?
Well, I think that, their argument was pitched to these Republican senators who are in a strange position because they are victims of
need
this
to put
failed
one more
coup,
little bit on top. Here's
they were kind of
Urban
powering
Decay,
them off like everyone else. They're also accomplices
super glittery
to this failed coup because they have enabled Trump and didn't remove him when they had a chance the last time he was impeached. And they're jurors.
She was like
So it's a
size
very
1.5
situation. And a lot of this argument was sort of saying to Republicans, Trump targeted Republicans too, over and over again. They brought up, for example, this mob chanting, destroy the GOP. They really focused on the victimization of Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence.
Like
they kept saying to the Republicans, Trump is different from you. And so if Republicans wanted to get on the right side of history, if they wanted to make a break from the last 4 years,
I'm going to get ready to go to the store now, but
they were saying,
nice to see you. Happy Thursday, and be safe wherever you are. Please wear your mask if you go out, and I will be back tomorrow. Please follow and bring your friends.
Won't let them because so much of